What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Grappler's Dilemma podcast. This is episode number 18. I'm here with Nate Yeager, who recently got promoted to black belt. So it's kind of like we're doing this, a week after? After your promotion?
Just a little over a week.
Just a little bit over a week from getting promoted to black belt. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how he got into jiu-jitsu, some things that he thinks are important, especially when it comes to motivation, goal setting, and that sort of thing. But first, before we went live, I was trying to tell like a story, a snake story about why I have a bearded dragon in my living room. And you told me that you have some good snake stories. Yeah, so let's start off with that. Let's hear one good snake story on the spot.
Totally unplanned. And had we not started having this reptile conversation, it
probably
would not have come up.
Yeah.
But you may or may not know, I'm from the South originally, from kind of the Memphis area.
Okay.
And one thing that we have a lot of in the South are snakes.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. So I've got two stories I'll share.
Yeah,
two snake stories. And I think it kind of planted the seed of my desire to be in snake-free country.
Is that okay? So that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. I was like, well, being around snakes, like having a bunch of them around there, did that make you more comfortable, or like, I just don't want to be around them?
Yeah, just a healthy fear.
Okay, fair
just
enough.
The right kind of fear.
Yeah.
So I remember, you know what a weeping willow tree is?
Oh, yeah.
I remember I was about 6 years old in my backyard and scaling this weeping willow tree and just reaching up for what I thought was like a branch in the tree. And as I grab it, this branch just starts wriggling and wiggling.
Oh, dude, that's like a nightmare scenario.
It's just a green snake in the tree. It looked just like one of the branches. And so like, I've never ever moved so quickly in my life, down that tree. Just,
dude, that is like
scale.
That's like something from a movie. You know what I mean? That's like something from a movie. That's crazy. Was it poisonous or anything like that?
No, I think that one was harmless.
Okay.
Just my psyche.
Yeah, fair enough, dude.
So that probably planted the seed and a predisposition for just a healthy fear.
Sure.
Fast forward a few years later, we'd moved out to the country and we were on this acreage and got this big gully in our backyard. So you can picture it there when it rains, it would kind of fill up and, just kind of marshy land. I was with my brother he's 11 years older than me. So I would tag along with him.
Okay.
We were exploring the bush out there. And for whatever reason, we just get this like, have you ever seen those magic eye illustrations where like you kind of look at them and you have to like almost cross your eyes and out of nowhere an image appears.
Yep.
Okay. So just picture a magic eye.
Okay.
And we're in this gully and then I don't know which one of us noticed it, but we noticed a snake.
Okay.
And we looked around and as soon as we did, good Lord, like 20 more appeared like in this gully and they were all like coiled and we were in like a den of snakes.
Oh my gosh.
So I realized at that age I was very pragmatic and I just did some quick math and I saw my brother's 11 years older, like I said, so I just jumped on his shoulders because I knew like if they're gonna strike, they're gonna strike much lower and just like asked him to haul ass and get out of there, so that's we got out safe and sound, all's well that ends well, but it's our Thanksgiving story that we tend to recount every year.
Dude, I love that. I feel like at Thanksgiving, like family events like that, there's always stories that are just repeat and come up and everyone gets a laugh out of it.
And the snakes get, it'll be 30 next year and they're like 10 feet long. Anacondas by this point.
Yeah, of course, dude.
But the reality is water moccasins, they are venomous. They'll mess you up.
Dude, no kidding. Yeah, my snake story is like much less, I don't know if exotic's the right word, but we went to, so I was telling Nate the reason I have a bearded dragon in my living room is because my daughter really wanted a snake and she was asking for a snake for like 2 years and I was kind of trying to work up the nerve to get one and I just like I can't do it, so like pick something else and bearded dragon, and so that's why I ended up with it. But we went to what was called the Reptile Man. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. Reptile Man is like this weird guy that has a house full of like tarantulas and bugs and snakes and reptiles. He is the Reptile Man. Anyway, we went to a birthday party. He's sitting out in the living room on a little chair. Dude, I feel my heart rate going up just telling the story, just so you know. And it gets to a point in like his presentation where he's like, so which one of you kids want to hold a snake? And of course the kid's like, me. they're probably 7 years old at that point. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to open up this tote. There's going to be like one corn snake or something that's small. One kid at a time is going to hold this snake. That's not what happened. What happened was he took handfuls of these, like corn snake size, right? Like small ball pythons, and just starts handing them out to 7-year-old kids, dude. And at this point, I'm like already backing up into the kitchen. I'm so uncomfortable. Like my anxiety just shoots through the roof. And you have like kids running up to you, like, check out this snake. And I was like close to like, push kicking this kid away from me, like little things like that. My daughter has a snake, and I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, this makes me so uncomfortable. Anyway, the snake starts like crawling into her jacket. And she looks up at me with like those, oh my gosh, please help me, Dad, eyes. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm, like, it took me a second to even respond. I'm like, I'm going to have to touch this freaking snake.
Yeah.
Pull the snake out, like, dude, like, just, I'm not going to say trembling, but it took every piece of me just to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then I hand it back to my 7-year-old daughter, who's just happy to be holding the snake again.
Oh, yeah.
Let it go and like get on out of there. But yeah, so I knew I wasn't going to have a snake in my house, but that was the reason. My daughter just got really into reptiles after that. And so I was like, okay, well, I can get like, if you're really interested in this, and she'd been pestering me for like 2 years after the fact, I was like, okay, you're really into this, we'll go ahead and get you a lizard. So now that's why we have that, dude. That's why we have that.
It seems like a good compromise.
Yeah, I think it's a good compromise. And he's so chill, dude, just like hangs out. We have a little pool, let him run around in it and stuff. And it's kind of a cool little talking piece, and it's a piece of decor, I feel at this point. But
well, I think what you just described is like the most quintessential dad moment. You're like, oh, Jesus, I gotta do this thing. There's no way I want to do it, but I have to.
Yeah, it's like, okay, she's about to find out that her dad is not the bravest guy in the world, right? But
or you could have teep kicked the kid.
That's true. So we didn't get to that point. That would have been, that would have been a very good Thanksgiving story, right? The time the dad chest kicked some kid. Okay, but now we'll start talking about some jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And I dropped this question today more or less when Nate walked in, but I wanted to talk to you now that you've just been promoted to black belt, right? You've gone through this long. How many years did you train before you get black belt?
Almost 9 years.
Almost 9.
Yeah.
That's pretty okay. They say like the average is right around 10, right?
Yeah.
That's like kind of the rule of thumb, more or less. But I thought it might be kind of fun to ask you like what you think is the most overrated piece of jiu-jitsu advice, because we have all of these these heuristics and all these like cliche pieces of advice that people like, well, just things like, and I'm not saying that this is one of them, or I would identify this as something I think is overrated, but like, well, just keep showing up, like little things that we say, or hey, you need to do this when it comes to like top control or whatever, things that are just repeated ad nauseum that maybe we don't even think about, we just take them for what they are. So I was just curious, like, what do you think is the most overrated advice?
Yeah, I mean, you said it already. I think if you come to someone and you feel like you're floundering and you don't know what in the world's going on, and you get this response of, well, just spend more time on the mats.
Yep.
Absolutely true. I mean, there's no way of getting around that. Yet it's a meme. It's not, totally. You're not really getting the heart of what someone's asking.
Yeah.
And I think it gets passed off as wisdom a lot of times, but it's really just a shorthand for like, I don't feel like talking.
Shoot, dude. Yeah, no, that's kind of because it's said a lot. And like you said, it's so ubiquitous that there's like memes about it and people are posting it online, and it's like, but it's often not even said in jest. It's really said as like, no, this is how you get, how you're going to really progress. It had nothing to do with like what someone wanted to talk about, like goal setting and things like that. It was really just go and do it.
In fact, you could train the wrong thing for years and not progress at all. So I think if you really cared, if someone asked you that question, I think then you would follow up and say, well, what is it? Let me see you. What are you doing? What's your specific question? I think then you could kind of have some better advancement. Sure. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the answer if it's just high level and the person's not that serious asking. But if they really have a question, I think we kind of owe it to the people that are newer to pause and try to understand where they're at.
Gotcha. So if you were to take, so we'll say that is a piece of overrated advice. What is a piece of advice that, being a black belt now, that either you received or that you think is important to give people when they're first starting off?
Yeah. I think a big, and it's funny, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to somewhat contradict it because I think it's what I needed for years.
Yes.
But it's not exactly what I need now. So I think getting to black belt is probably like, this is what I needed. It's really understanding physical attributes and the importance of that from like a strategic perspective. So if, for instance, I was never a wrestler, I enjoy it, but I know I'm not a great wrestler. Probably just average person. Yeah, I'm gonna win. But if it's, someone that trained in high school, trained in college, that's probably a battle I'm not going to win. So understanding that they have that background, those attributes, you need to evolve your game to recognize that from the outset. Yes. So if what does that mean? It means maybe I need to trap someone in guard and then develop that. So I think really thinking through what you're naturally good at from just a physical perspective, or maybe what you're naturally weak at, and develop games around that.
Gotcha.
And really be strategic in that sense. And just embrace it. Gotcha. I think that's valuable. And then that you develop your strengths from that. Now you would say the piece of that, I think that's what I needed. Now what I need, because my attributes are that I'm large. I've had to kind of be defensive a lot simply because I am so big. Yes. Like I don't want to just bully people.
Gotcha.
So I've developed a game that's very passive.
Yeah.
And I turn on the aggression when I need to.
Sure.
Whereas now I really want to kind of evolve to the point where I deploy the aggression whenever I want in whatever situation. And it's always dangerous.
Yep.
So that's something that I'm working on, sort of one move at a time. I'm not trying to throw 1,000 new tricks in my bag, my toolbox, but I want to, spend a month refamiliarizing myself with triangle and where, do I hit this from every position? Can I hit this on every single person and no one is going to escape?
Gotcha.
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no kidding, man. I think like you were saying, it's like what you need when it comes to like progressing and training. It's just by the nature of the game, it's going to change over time, right? Yeah. So it's like me, Cody, Matt, we've talked about this idea of like constant reassessing, because it's like you might be like, hey, I'm going to work on my wrestling, and then you start working on your wrestling, and then you almost like you start getting pretty proficient at it, and you don't even realize, okay, maybe it's time to start changing direction. You've just kind of like settled into this space, and it's time to start progressing in a different way. Before I kind of got a little bit deeper into jiu-jitsu, and I'm only a purple belt now, but that idea of like just show up, as far like it certainly is overrated. I think that, like you said, it's often used in a way that's kind of like dismissive of what the questions are, like, because you have to have some type of game plan for progression. Like almost for me, it's like, okay, we'll focus on trying to understand the mechanics of this one position and then how to escape from these other positions, right? But the flip side to that, and I wasn't thinking about that until we just started talking, but it's like maybe for some people, maybe that is the right advice, right? Like you were saying, it's kind of like dependent on who you're talking to and what stage they're in, but it's like, because it's really easy to get discouraged, especially in the beginning. And I don't know, well, the first time I grappled with you, dude, you were like so strong and dominant. I had that thought where I was like, why does this guy even need jiu-jitsu, dude? He's like, he could just mess people up, is what it felt like, but for the people that like start off, it's like, dude, I'm getting stomped out every class. It's like maybe sometimes they need that little bit of a push for like, okay, I know it sucks right now, but like just keep coming back, right? And then you'll talk to guys like Nate who will try to give you a game plan of like, hey, this is the stuff that it'd be good if you worked on, because you'll be having more fun if you can get proficient at these few things, So I'm going to say that is still the most overrated piece of advice. I'm just trying to be charitable to the people. I
think it's overrated and it's valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And then as far as underrated, dude, I think the most underrated piece of advice, and I only say this from my personal experience because this is what changed my journey in jiu-jitsu, with Zach Stazer being like pulling me aside at the old location and saying, dude, you're technically proficient and you're good on the ground, but like you need to be meaner. Like it's like we're all training partners. Like no one's gonna get upset with you that you're putting a little extra shoulder pressure and like cross facing people. It's like that's part of the game. Yeah. And it was like, it kind of gave me this permission where I was like, oh, okay, I'm not trying to be mean to people. I'm not being like malicious or anything. It's okay for me to kind of do this, because it's already kind of uncomfortable to touch people, especially when you're starting off that you don't really know, right?
Yeah.
So to take people and put them in this mindset is like, well, this is what we are here to do, is like grab onto people and make them uncomfortable, and like, you know, you're not trying to hurt anybody, but you're essentially trying to hurt them, you know, but it's like in a safe way, more or less. Like you're able to throttle it a little bit. Yeah. So I think that for me was the most underrated piece of advice, because no one had ever said that to me before. And I don't think that I would be as proficient as I am now. Not to say that I'm some world beater or something, but I don't think I would be at the place I am now and as comfortable with my own game if it wasn't for Zach saying that, like talking about things like aggression and that, because, you know, we always talk about, well, don't use your strength, like focus on technique, which maybe that's the most overrated piece of advice, dude, is never relying on your strength. I'm like, dude, strength is an attribute, just like speed, just like size, just like length, right? Just like, I don't know, it's just kind of a funny thing, but I don't think we really think about that often. And it just kind of popped in my head when you walked in here, because, you know, like we were saying, there's so many turns of phrase that we say in jiu-jitsu and just kind of like take for granted because they've been said so many times without really doing an analysis on whether or not it's something valuable to pass on. But anyway, I want to talk to you about how you got into jiu-jitsu. When I first met you, you were a purple belt.
Could I add to that point?
Totally, dude. Totally. Yes.
I could not agree more with the pain compliance as a principle. Yep. It's absolutely valuable. And what the result of this is that the more that we do this in this, controlled environment, the better everyone around us is.
Yes.
And then the more effective we are ultimately if and when this is ever actually used as self-defense.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So that's the idea, because these moves work independent of your belt. They work independent of anything. So if you're not in a position where you can dominate and cause pain to someone else, like what's the point of it all?
Sure.
And you got to have some degree of like comfort with that violence, I think.
You know what's so funny is one time I asked you, like, so what is like, because you were hitting, and people have recognized this about you, like you'll hit people in almost unorthodox submissions, right? It's like you just put in a position like, holy crap, okay, I didn't even know there was a submission there. And I remember asking you, this is for the benefit of everyone listening, being like, what do you, like when you're doing these submissions, like what's going through your head? And you said something akin to, I just turn things and push things in ways I know they're not supposed to move. And I was like, okay, that's like so, like that's such a primitive vision, but it clearly works. You know what I mean? It was not the answer I was expecting. I was like expecting something almost eloquent, and it's like I just turn their body and move it in ways that I know it's not really supposed to go. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's fundamentally what we're trying to do here, right? So, but it's just kind of funny because your game and a lot of the things you do, and I'm thinking right now of like some of your side control sweeps that you've hit on me, and I've seen you hit on other people where you're like head throwing people, like stuff like that, where I'm like, you don't really see that often, so people can be susceptible to it, but like the principles still apply, you know? It's kind of an interesting thing. I always thought that was like a very funny philosophy. I will never forget like that moment, dude. I thought it was very funny.
Well, that makes me very happy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the way I think about it. I mean, there are certain like, things that I always want to do technically right.
Sure.
But a lot of that comes from what I was saying earlier about putting myself in a defensive, weak position because I am so big.
Yes.
And the reason I do that is early on, like after my first few weeks, like I was submitting a lot of people,
I believe you.
so it's like at some point I was like, well, I really need to take a step back and, think about what I'm supposed to be technically.
Sure.
Supposed to be doing technically. And that I think that's what really pushed it. And then with my injury, where I was literally just, I've got one arm, and like one, let me try to still train.
Well, let's talk about that injury real quick, right?
Yeah.
So for the injury that he's referring to is a broken leg.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Trimalleolar fracture.
So what happened? Let's explain that real quick.
Okay, so I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what I think preceded it as well.
Then we'll get back to the context of it.
Yeah. So I was the moral of this story is warm up. I think is and I try to always stretch and do everything now. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
So anyway, so warm up, guys. But I showed up to, I think we had an open mat. Yeah, it was July 4th or July 3rd. Yeah, July 3rd. And I got there. I just went immediately to standing with my son Leo, and we were kind of messing around. And then I went to roll with Blake, and we were just doing stand up. I don't really know what happened. Blake said he just hit a sweep single, and next thing I know, I'm on the mat, which I expected because Blake's an excellent wrestler. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just get my game off here. But I just kind of, saw everyone's faces at that moment. And then I heard Blake or someone say, Nathan, don't look. I was like, oh shit, what is this?
Oh, serious?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything. I didn't feel anything. I was on the ground ready to defend, and I just saw the panic on everyone's faces around me.
So, okay.
So from that let me finish. From this vantage point, I still don't know what's happening. And I kind of like out of my periphery, I look down and see that my foot is pointed in the wrong direction and kind of folded under. And then I just go straight zen and just like fall back to the mat.
Yeah.
And from that point on, like Yeager's taking care of me. Everyone's taking care of me, calling the ambulance and whatnot. But the only thing I really recall, and this is my son was there.
Yep.
And I kind of saw how he was affected by seeing me on the mat. And that moment you were talking about with the snake. I felt the very same feelings. Like, oh, it's all good, man.
Yeah,
there's nothing to see here. I'm chill. And I just wanted to make sure I had my keys, my wallet, my phone, all these things squared away. I was like, hey, why don't you go ahead and call your mom? And tell her, it's like, we got a little situation here.
For sure.
And then, so a month later, I've got, plate 10. I think I have 10 screws here and 2 on this side. And they have a thing called a tightrope that pulls my 2 ankles together.
Gotcha.
So, but 3 months later, I was back in the gym.
Yeah,
and
which
I was
is
training.
I mean, I always thought it was cool that you would come in on crutches and just like hang out.
Yeah, well, I loved it. I felt like, it was great to get back out of the house.
Sure.
And I felt a bit like Yoda because I would get on the mats with my crutches.
Yeah.
And I'd wipe them down, with the Lysol. But I would just walk around. And I felt like the crutches gave me this extra authority. And I would see people, I'd just like tap them like Yoda, and I'm like, no.
Dude, that's awesome.
Guard you will.
So you didn't like feel it initially?
No.
Okay, so let me tell you why. I'm sure people have said this, but like why there was so much panic. Like, I think I was grappling with Cody. It had to have been with Cody, but dude, it sounded like a wooden baseball bat snapping in half. It was so loud. So everyone stops, looks up at each other. Then we look over, and Blake is like, he's like, don't look at it. And I'm like, of course, your first thing you do is look at it. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, dude, just full of like, holy crap. And Avery sees it, looks at me, he's like, I can't be in here. And he just walks off the mat and leaves the building. I'm like, oh, that's freaking hilarious. But dude, that was really like, that's something to aspire to. The fact like you were really like cool and collected for seeing how gnarly the injury was. And and that, warms my heart when you talk about your son, right? Where it's like, you see this like concern for his father. Yeah. Like this catastrophic injury. And you're just kind of like, you went into dad mode kind of like, right? You're not even thinking about yourself. You're just like, okay, I need to like comfort my son here. Like, dude, that kind of stuff is beautiful to me. Like I love that. And it speaks to your character. So I just want to say that first of all.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Well, my son cut himself with one of my knives last night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like just like I was like, he said, can I hold this? Like, yeah, you can hold it. And then he's like, okay, you're done. Put it in the sheath. And then he grabs the sheath, pulls it out, cuts his thumb, immediately starts like bleeding and crying. Yeah. But it was like the same thing where I'm like, oh, shoot, man, let's like go through this. But you're just trying to like find that comfort, with your child and that sort of thing. So I definitely empathize with what you're speaking of. But anyway, going back to what you were talking about, like going after the recovery, now you're on the mats and you're having to roll. Were you wearing a boot? For some of it, right?
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Had a cast and a boot.
Yeah, probably not like doctor advised, right?
I did talk to them, and I don't know if they ever just gave me like full on like approval, but they're like, well, as long as you're not kicking, I think you got screws in. I was like, I'm not kicking, I promise.
Right on.
But it did back to that point about the defensive posture and like starting in like the worst position. It was even worse because now like the entire right side is shut down. So how could I actually fight people with one arm? Yeah. And like half of a leg. Sure. And surprisingly you can. Yeah. If you do it right. Yeah. And I think those limitations are kind of it's interesting. I mean, you'd never voluntarily do that kind of thing. For sure. It does force you to evolve and I don't know what the it changes you.
Yeah, changes you. That's for sure. Like, man. Well, anyway, so I guess we'll talk about how you found jiu-jitsu. The first time that I had ever met you, I remember this very clearly. No gi open mat. You asked me to roll. And I'll be honest, dude, I was like, slender build, tall guy. It's like, I'll be fine. Yeah. And then when I felt how strong you were, and then I was getting muscle over, because I was not expecting that. Yeah. I was like, okay, dude might be technical, but I wasn't expecting the strength that you were gonna have. And it's like, it's even true now, where it's like, you're built like a skateboarder or something. Yeah. So it's like when you grab onto people, and it's like, oh, this guy has like concrete worker strength, and I don't even know what to do here, you know. That was the very first time. And then you're wondering like, hey, well, what belt is he? Please be like higher belt than me. That'd make me feel much better. But purple belt, and then I saw you get promoted to brown belt, and then I was there for when you got promoted to black, which is pretty neat, man. But yes, like, how did you discover jiu-jitsu? How old were you?
I was pretty young. I was 36.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. So 4 years older than I am now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 36 when I started. And actually back to the grip thing. I'm gonna come right back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I never realized that before. Oh. I think it's a family trait.
Is that right?
That's all. Because it's not like I actively train like grip strength or anything, but I hear that all the time. Like when you grab me, I feel like there's nothing I can do. Like, and I hear it enough that I believe it.
Yeah.
But my dad is like that. He's got, if he were to, he's in his 80s now, but I guarantee, like, if he were to, like, if we played Mercy, he would beat me.
No kidding.
I think it's just a genetic thing.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Talk about attributes, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do not have that attribute. I wish I did though.
We have strong hands and weak ankles. I don't know. Oh yeah, I think I had a pre-existing fracture.
Is that right?
Fracture. Yeah, because I had we're kind of all over the place. I promise I'm coming back to the story. Okay. But I was triangling. Do you know Willie at T-Town?
Yes, big.
Yeah, strong
big
Willie.
Dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I was I had him in a triangle, and I was like squeezing for all my might, and I felt this like ping, kind of like, it felt like a hair or something, like a line got pulled in my leg. I was like, I gotta stop. And for like a week or two after that, I was really nursing it, and then it kind of got better from there. But that's exactly the spot that popped. So I think I probably had something that was like, it was easy to pop.
Gotcha. So, dang, man.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, so back to your question about origin. I was in sales, and I was on the road all the time.
Okay.
And listening to Joe Rogan podcast, and it had nothing to do with fighting. I didn't care a thing in the world about fighting at the time. I just wanted to hear about like pyramids and like
totally,
all the weird stuff that was out there. And it just, after I got through all that, then it was like, oh well, you should try jiu-jitsu. You should try it. And I hear it time and again. So probably at 34 is when the seed was planted. Okay. And I kept talking about it off and on, but it was kind of intimidating.
Yeah, totally.
The idea. But then I called Chris and just was like, hey, I want to give this a try, and dropped in. Okay. And it was off to the races. After that. But so that was the impetus there. But I think the seed was planted much earlier in my life because I fought a lot when I was a kid.
Okay.
Didn't really want to, but I was just in situations where I got into a lot of little skirmishes.
Okay.
And, I'd win some, I'd lose some.
Sure.
And I just always wanted to do karate and all these different things. And I wish, had I had this back then, it would have made life a lot more fun, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, fair enough, dude. So like, what, like just schoolyard fights?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I moved around a lot.
Did you?
Yeah. So that was, and when I say I was just always the new kid.
Gotcha.
I wasn't 6'4" at the time.
Yeah.
So, everyone was, not everyone, but like people, you go to a new school and they'll,
test you a little bit.
Yeah. And like some of these places, out in the country, they're just a little wacky.
Gotcha.
And, I remember my cousins teaching me how to throw punches and stuff when I'm like 9 years old. And I'm like practicing on pillows.
Yeah.
Literally, because I have to prepare to go to school
and
like face all these folks all the time. So, that was the seed that's planted. I had it's hopefully a different world now, but like I had a school bus driver that pulled over. Just so I could fight on the bus with a kid that wanted to fight me.
Are you serious?
Like I didn't think it was actually happening. It's like, there's no way this is happening. Grown man pulled over for 9-year-olds to fight.
Whoa.
And I got kind of blindsided and kid grabbed me by my backpack and threw me down on the aisle. And I was stuck like a
What
turtle on his back.
Yeah.
I couldn't get up. So those events leave you remember those.
Yeah, it's a lasting impression.
And then once I, made it to middle school, high school, and I was the biggest guy around. Like none of that stuff ever happened again. But I think jiu-jitsu is really scratching that itch. If I could jump in a time machine and go back, I would hit someone with a goshi.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, so that's probably what it is.
Yeah, for sure. What was that first class like? Like, what do you remember? Were you like nervous before going in or anything? Or
I'm sure I was to some degree, but I'm pretty good with. I like new experiences, new events. I mean, I'm comfortable on the stage generally, so I don't mind. I don't know what really makes me all that nervous.
Gotcha.
So if it's exciting enough, I'll find a way to get into it. I'll override the nerves.
Okay. What was like some of the early on? What are the things that you remember really leaning into?
Yeah, I would say the first thing was really not having an explanation of what the heck was going on.
Gotcha.
So it's like, really to the point, like, am I throwing punches here? Yeah. Like, what am I doing?
Gotcha.
And like that, just feeling so like a fish out of water.
Sure.
And then also Bruna, who was a purple belt at the time when I started, and she mounted me, and there was nothing I could do to get this smallish woman off of me, and I was like literally feeling like I was about to have a heart attack trying to push and do all this stuff, totally ineffective. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is real. Yeah. There's something to this.
Gotcha.
If I'm getting dominated like this.
So like when you had that experience, was it like, did you get, they say like you got the bite where it's like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to do this. Yeah. Or did you were you in there and then you left for a bit or anything like that? Or did you get in there and you're like, okay, I'm in it?
Yeah, I was definitely, I don't know, addicted right away. Okay. Like it grew on me.
Yeah.
And I took breaks too in the beginning because I've got a lot of different interests, and I would skate during the summer and different things. So I had a lot of competing interests, I would say. But probably around blue belt, like it was pretty solidified at that point, Okay. It was game on.
What was like your first? Did you? Well, I'll ask this: did you compete? When did you start competing?
I competed. White, blue. I didn't do purple because of COVID.
Gotcha.
Brown, and then my injury. So I do like competition.
Yeah.
But I'm not a world beater in these even local competitions. Yeah. But I usually get on the podium. And, that's. And in the back of my mind, I really would like to do some fun stuff and competing with the black belt as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's more for me. It's not about like, do I have this medal to show off? If it were, I'd probably put more into it. Gotcha. Frankly, it's about uncovering where your gaps are. Sure. I like that aspect of it.
So when when you talk about competing, what were some of the early on? Well, we were going to talk about the topic of like short-term, long-term goal setting. Like, when was the first? I didn't really get this. Let me give some context. I didn't really get really intentional about my training until probably as early as 2 years ago, where I was like, okay, I need to work on this position. I need to be better about this type of defense. I really keep on getting stuck in this position. I need to focus on my study on how to escape from here. So like early on, what do you remember as far as like, okay, did you always kind of have those like short-term goals in your head, or do they kind of like manifest over time?
Yeah, I think short-term was usually driven by, competition more than anything, is like training for that, or whoever is the most challenging person in the gym. Like, what are they catching me in? And it's usually, I would say, my focus would kind of distill to that specific problem that I'm trying to solve, which is challenging when you go to class and you want to practice one thing and we're drilling something else.
Sure.
For me, it's tough to keep all that straight and like try to actually learn the move that they're teaching, as opposed to like what your preconceived idea before you came in there. So that balance I find tricky at times.
Do you find it like, as a taller guy, I asked this question to Nate too, right? Yeah. Bigger dude. Most of your training partners are going to be much smaller than you are. Do you have a hard time like do you ever find yourself wishing like, man, I wish there was more guys my size in here to like really be working on this stuff? Because your game is going to, like, the size of your opponent does dictate the way that you're going to be able to roll. Yeah. So it's like, is that kind of like is it frustrating, or like, how do you like really?
Yeah, it's, I don't know if it's frustrating. It's just the reality of, that we have to deal with. I think it's odd when there's someone that's my size.
Sure.
I mean, so then it's bizarre. It's like, oh, this is what it should be like.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. It's part and parcel of jiu-jitsu for me, is that there just aren't enough folks my size. So.
Yeah. Well, so if someone were to come to you and ask you about, like, okay, talking about goal setting, right? And the idea is like, okay, well, what should I be working on? How should I really be thinking about this journey, right? Say they're thinking, I don't know, like for me, like when I think long-term goal is to get my black belt, right? And I do things that are specific towards that end, where I'm like, okay, here's where, if I want to be a black belt and I want to be able to instruct people, or I want to own my own academy, which is, I guess, the longest term goal. Yeah. Like, what are some things that I need to develop in order to be proficient and effective in that position, right? So, and I mean that position as being like a leader in a gym or being a head instructor, this kind of thing. So I really do. I think about all my training almost in that context, right? The short-term thing would be like, okay, well, a good black belt should know how to have some wrestling, like in my brain, right? So it should have some wrestling. So this is what I'm going to focus on. And then the short-term goal would derivative from that and be, okay, I need to work on having a good single leg, or how do I finish a double leg? How do I do knee taps from, whatever position, that sort of thing. So that's just like the context kind of the question. But like, what kind of advice would you give to people when it comes to, setting goals in the realm of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think it sounds like you're on the right track from my perspective. I think, I know I came to you with that as the suggestion. Yeah. Now I'm actually kind of questioning it, because I've evolved a bit in my thinking. Okay. Because I had the same, like, I'd love to get a black belt. I want to stick around. So my goal is really, I want to do this forever. Yes. And I want to have, that's why my son is in the gym with me. I want to have this thing that we are doing at Thanksgiving, where we got the grandkids over and we're throwing kids through the air. Yeah. And, like, it looks like those old VHS tapes of the Gracies. Like, that's, I think, long term for me. The belt is definitely this huge milestone, like on the way to achieving that. But I think you can know all the moves. I guess you can be an encyclopedia of every move, but I don't know that's a prerequisite for the belts. I think effectiveness and understanding positions and whatnot, I think is probably, in my mind, it's more important. Because you can watch a YouTube video before you go to class and like, oh yeah, you just do this and that. And like, the move. Yeah. They're not always that complicated. But do you have the confidence behind the move or the position to teach it and to feel that like you're an authority if someone asks you? Yes. And that's why I think, I don't know if I'm actually answering the question.
It's okay.
But it's, I think less is more now. The kind of more I've done this, because I don't do all the guards. Sure. There are 1,000 different guards, and I think closed guard is about the most effective thing there is, frankly, for me. Yes. And then I use it in various ways, and that's something you learn day one. Yeah. And perfecting that, but understanding everything that's involved with that. Is it you're setting up a closed guard where if you were to do this in a self-defense scenario, are you just going to get like ground and pound, and punched in the face, elbowed in the face? Like, understanding that element of it, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah. You just mentioned, this is kind of funny because like when we first started off, you were talking about, your injury, you look up and you see your son in the gym and you want kind of dad mode. And then you just kind of made a point about, I want to get to a time where, Thanksgiving, we're throwing the kids around like the old Gracie videos and stuff. So family is clearly something that you are thinking about. So I want to talk to you, like, so your son Leo, what is he now as far as belt goes?
Orange belt.
Oh, he's an orange belt, right? Which is what, like the blue belt will be his next step?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
I mean, the orange belt barely fits him.
Yeah, gotcha. So like, how long did you train before you got Leo involved with jiu-jitsu?
Leo started about a year after I did. Okay. So he's been in there forever. We have pictures, of him when he's like this tall. Yeah, he's 6'1", 6'2", maybe 14.
That's crazy. Was it something that he had showed interest in because dad's doing it, or were you like, hey, you're gonna come do some jiu-jitsu with me, and you go from there?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. Early on. Yes, and Yeah, your kids are in. They train, right?
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
We can relate probably to this. So I think depending on the age and how much they commit, that it changes. So I would say for the first 5-6 years, it was a lot of prodding. You know, you're coming. We're paying for this. You're doing it, and this is something that if you want to quit when you're, when you get your blue belt, you can quit.
Sure.
But until then, we are your accountability, and we're going to keep you.
How old was he
when he started?
Yeah,
I think 7.
Okay, my daughter, same thing. It's so that I've never heard that before. We are your accountability.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful perspective to have, because it's. Dude, you meet some parents who are not their kids' accountability, where it's like allow them run roughshod kind of.
Speaking of family, and I'll get back to the story.
Yes.
I would thank my wife a lot for this, because I think she has, she's big on structure and big on, if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it.
Sure.
And like, I think she's a good influence in that way. So I don't know if left to my own devices, I would have all these like, track records of this. And an example of this from her influence is the kids have lived in one area their entire lives, essentially. And I moved, by the time I was 11, I'd probably been to like 11 schools. I moved constantly. So I didn't value that consistency, that commitment to the degree that she did. And I think she's been a good influence on the family writ large. But then now we see the result of this as well. And it's, a value I've adopted. And now our kids have it as well. So it's like, it's evident. And now the result of this is Leo's been there 6-7 years. Now he's the one that wants to go.
I love that.
And, it's not a matter of motivating him. It's, hey, I want to go there. We come home, we train, we do different things. He's always trying to take me down. And, it's not going to happen.
Maybe someday. But that day is not today.
We'll see. I'll break an ankle. No, he can't. He's actually really good at takedowns. He's got no fear. I contrary to that, do have fear, because I got guillotined so bad in one of my white belt comps doing a single leg. That it just really scared me for takedowns for the longest time. And not anymore. I get but like it really affected the way that I approach takedowns.
Dude, so, I totally get that. So my daughter, it was kind of man, I had already been training for a little while when I got her into it, but it was really, hey, we're gonna go do this thing. And she's like, okay. Like, she's kind of like easy like that. And now it's just as much a part of our life as going to school or going to church on Sundays, where it's just like, okay, these days I have jiu-jitsu, like we just go do it. It's not even like, it's not a discussion. It's just one of those things. It's like, this is what we do as a family, right? I've been trying to like get my wife to do it for the longest time. She'll never in a million years, dude. Like, she knows how sweaty I get on the mat. She's like, I'm not doing that with most people. Yeah, dude. I'm like, I'm not.
And not metaphorically, literally.
Dude. She smells my gi when I get home and stuff. She's like, I'm not doing that. But like both my kids, my son, not as often. My son's 5. He's much more sensitive than my daughter, and much less like, I would say, adventurous and confident in that way. But he'll only go if I can make the kids class to coach. So if he knows he has like me as that safety blanket who's there. But like I said, he's only 5 years old, and we started Kennedy 2 years after that. So, but we just made it like a part of life. So it's not and she sees like that I'm friends with jiu-jitsu people, and guys from class come over and we do this podcast. She sees how much it means to me. And it's not like it's not like it's her primary interest, right? It's not. She has other things that she would definitely put above jiu-jitsu as far as things that she enjoys doing. But it's almost not even in the same category, because it's just such a normal function of what we do as a family. It would be like if she were to ask, can I stop doing jiu-jitsu? In her brain, that's the equivalent of being like, hey, can I stop going to elementary school? Like, I don't want to do elementary school anymore. It's like, well, we just do this, right? It's just something that we do. And I think it's awesome. Like, I do. I mean, you have to love when you see your kids like entering into this thing that you have found derived so much value out of, right? And that you've obviously been so committed to, that now you're sitting in front of me as a black belt. That's kind of a cool deal. So as far as motivation goes, right? We talked about this idea of, and this is a topic that's kind of been brought up on the podcast before, but these peaks and valleys of where, there was definitely times where it's like, I'm dragging myself to practice. Either I'm in some kind of a slump, or, I'm just tired, I don't want to go, that kind of thing. I always end up getting myself in there to go, right? And that goes back to the whole adage of like, we'll just keep on showing up. But for me, and I'm going to ask what your perspective is first, but like the way that my motivation has certainly changed over time. But so to that end, I'm curious, like what you do to stay motivated, or what does motivate you, like to go hit the mats every day?
Yeah. So yeah, long-term goal and then motivation.
Yeah.
So like you, yeah, once I was bitten by the bug, I was like, yeah, I want to progress, I want to get all these belts. I want to do this for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's what I described to you. So it's more of a full martial arts journey because as you may recall, like I took forays into judo earlier this year and I really enjoyed it. And I see myself doing something like that again down the road. There's a time and a place for everything.
Yep.
So, motivation and goal setting, like the goal is a very long-term vision. And the motivation is, how do you stay on the path throughout a lifetime?
Yeah.
And staying on the path means, how do you mitigate injury? How do you, through the ups and downs and work, relationship, all these things, like how do you keep going? And the answer is you may not at times, and that's okay. It's over the years.
Yeah.
Are you there? And don't beat yourself up if you can't be there. You don't owe anyone anything, but the group will be there when you come back.
Sure.
And just, I think not beating yourself up and just, it's like profitability.
Yeah.
If you look at a curve, like you're going to have these ups and downs constantly.
Yep.
The market goes up, the market goes down. But over time, it trends in the right direction. And that's the way that I see all this. So you kind of have an idea of my long-term goal. This is just part of mental health. It's part of fun.
Yep.
And that's like short-term, like how do you keep at it? Like what's this short milestone you want to, first and foremost, is just fun to go there. And who beat me today? Or like what position did I not actually win that I thought I could? And that gives me the mental, dopamine to like go learn something new.
Sure.
And I'm a lifelong learner. So that is always motivating. And the fact that you just feel good.
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, you can have an injury, but generally you feel,
as long as you don't snap your leg.
Yeah. As long as you don't say, but generally, like from a mental perspective, you feel pretty good on the drive home. And you're like chilled out and like, it gets you through the next few days and it's good. And I think for guys where we know that men kill themselves at an inordinate rate, that it's a crazy world for guys in a lot of respects. And that this is an outlet that I wish I could say that it helped that for a lot of folks, because there are still folks that kill them. I mean, there are folks from the gym that are killing themselves, but I think it can be an antidote to some of that stuff. And that, for all those reasons, that's the addiction for me. That's what keeps you coming back. And I think once you look back and you see like the discipline and the commitment you've made, it gives you confidence in other areas of your life because you have committed to something to this great degree where there isn't always an immediate reward.
Sure.
You might feel on top of the world and you show up and you're like, how in the world that guy beat me?
Yeah.
And like you're going on the drive home instead
no music and you're just
the drive home, you're just staring into the void. You're like, I thought I was good. But that in itself is like that. There's a lot of value there too if you want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about. I've had a couple people that I have had in my life that have committed suicide. It's one of the things, sometimes you meet guys at the gym, right? Where it's like, there's that, again, this is kind of something that's said a lot, but like Jiu-Jitsu saves lives in a way. And I know it sounds kind of corny for people that are kind of uninitiated into the sport, but I've met a lot of guys that are like, dude, my life was going down the wrong direction. Like, especially during COVID, where I've meeting guys that are like, dude, I was drinking myself to death. I was, I wasn't taking care of myself. I'd show up and sit on the couch and, eat myself to death or whatever. And it was, then they get out, they're doing this physical activity, which is like, this central component is jiu-jitsu, but they were building this community of other guys around themselves where it's like, me and Matt had talked about this in the last episode, but this idea that when you think about like just the caliber of a lot of the people that you meet in the gym, where it's like, man, you're surrounded by a lot of like good dudes with very, very like positive sentiments that are they're there for one another, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's a spectrum there, right? You get closer to certain people at the gym than others, but like you are developing this community around yourself that's also helping to uplift each other and that sort of thing. So I think that, that's a huge component of it that I think is often, for me, it's like I never really appreciated until I really sat down and realized, like, dude, I've got most of the people I hang out with now outside of, when I'm on my off time, I'm not working and I'm not training, are guys that I know from the gym, which is like really, it's an interesting thing. You just have a tendency to get close to people in that way.
Yeah. Well, I think it seems like it's part and parcel of, the intimacy that exists, because in no other realm are you like literally sweating onto someone's face and breathing in their essence.
You're breathing in their essence. That's
getting waterboarded with these folks. So like you can't help but have a degree of comfort there where you can just about say anything. Just about, and where else in your life, do you have people that aren't your family that are asking where the hell you are if you're not there? I think that's important. If I were gone for a month, I'm pretty sure people would ask, what the hell's going on. And that's good, know, and it doesn't mean that we've all got busy lives. It doesn't mean that we're hanging out constantly or anything like that, but there's some degree of, social accountability, maybe. And I like that. Cause I've reached out to people on occasion just to tap. There are a couple of folks at the gym that I haven't seen in a while. This weekend, I'm probably going to send them a message and just, hopefully prompt them to get back in. Now, I think that's good at our gym. And I think Chris's attitude is one that it's perfect and it fosters this type of environment. I do think there are inherent dangers in that, what you're talking about. I think it can tend toward a cult environment
I agree.
Very easily.
Yeah.
And with the right, person at the helm, and I think it teeters over to that, or it can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we're fortunate to have that environment. If I were to change gyms, it would have, if we were to move, that's what I would be looking for.
Yeah.
Is this a megalomaniac that's running a place and, people are just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it can venture down that path, but I think we're in a good place.
Yeah. I mean, culture is such a huge component. And, we talked about memes earlier, but there's this sentiment on the internet now where it's like, I'm good at doing arm bars. Like, I'm a black belt. I'm an instructor. I'm good at doing arm bars. Why are you asking me about how you should like fix your marriage?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when you talk about that cult component to it, and I know you've done like a little bit of a dive in like traditional martial arts and that kind of stuff, right? We talked a little bit about that, and then you were going to check out judo and this kind of stuff. And I have the same kind of affinity for exploring that. I mean, for Christmas, I got my dad a karate gi and stuff like that, and we ended up getting our red belts together, right? The first promotion, then it was like, okay, I thought we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, now we'll be done with it. But you do find this idea, just because of the inherent hierarchy that gets established within a gym, that you see that kind of stuff happening. And then, not to get too dark about this kind of stuff, but you see things like, like sexual abuse happening in not just jiu-jitsu gyms, but like other martial arts academies, because there's, right, you see it with like schools and churches and this kind of stuff, where it's like these people in positions of authority, right, like really perverting that position for their own ends, right? And I think that you're exactly right. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Chris is that guy. It's almost he's in there as like one of the guys who just happens to have a black belt. It's the
antithesis of that concept.
Yeah, it's like call him professor. It's like it's almost like in jest, because he's like, dude, what are you even doing? You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I'll call him coach or call him Chris, or I'll call him coach, like just as a sign of respect for, especially new people and stuff in the gym, that sort of thing. But like, it just feels like Chris is my friend who happens to have a black belt and he's good at doing jiu-jitsu. And now he's nice enough. Well, I guess his income also depends on this, but to teach me jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, that's kind of the vibe that is going on there. So I think that what you said is exactly right. It's like, it can absolutely turn into that. And I've been into some academies where it's like, this is weird. Like you feel that, I don't know, there's just some undertone there where it's like, hey, the way people are talking about the professor, talking to the professor, or even certain things as far as like bowing to the picture of Carlson Gracie and stuff. I'm like, man, this is kind of weird, right? Like, this is kind of an odd little gesture. But yeah, I think that's also an important thing to point out for sure. But also, some people don't commit suicide because they find Scientology and they're like, oh, here we go. Maybe that's helpful for those people.
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Tom Cruise, I mean, you can't deny the guy's results.
You will get results from Scientology. So I guess the last little, bit while we tie it all in here, we were talking about, traditional martial arts and kind of like for me, I'm trying to think of even how to word this question. There's like a lot more emphasis I feel like on like life philosophy when it comes to things like in karate, right? Like there's this talk about integrity and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that the martial arts academy, I'm dropping this question on you, but do you think that a martial arts academy is really the place for that, and that we should be being better about it? Maybe kids class would be a more specific, like maybe it's appropriate there, but it's trying to bring that type of a value system into the gym? Or do you think that that's something that should be kind of explored in people's like personal time? And I'll put this in context, like for me, and obviously feel free to push back on this, but that was one thing about modern combat sports that I almost thought was kind of missing. It was like, okay, we are implementing, or we're understanding how to accomplish violence and be proficient when it comes to like hand-to-hand combat and self-defense and this sort of thing. But there's also the one thing I appreciated about the karate thing was, it was a mixed class. So there was, junior high kids all the way up to me and my dad, who were clearly the oldest people in there for sure. But there was this talk about like, okay, but it's important to recognize that this skill set comes with a certain amount of responsibility, right? Like an old kung fu movie where it's like, okay, you can do these things, but it doesn't mean that you should do these things. This is kind of like a last resort, and we should be using this skill set to, protect yourself and others, and not be out there poking fights and that kind of thing. So yeah, like, do you have a take on that?
So the question is, do you think
that we could be better about like talking about that kind of stuff in contemporary combat sports in the same way they do in like traditional martial arts?
About your responsibility for not
or even integrity and those kind of philosophies and that kind of thing? Or do you think it's like inappropriate? It's like, hey, we're here, it's like a softball team, we just learn how to fight.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to directly answer your question, but I'm going to give you the way that I see, like if I had my own gym, the way I would approach it. So there's the kind of sport aspect of jiu-jitsu where we do all these moves, and then, the self-defense concept. I think they're both fun. Yeah, the self-defense is probably why most people, at least in the back of their minds, are coming in there. It could be wrong. Maybe it's not most. Maybe some folks heard of like Gordon Ryan or someone. Yeah. I kind of doubt that.
Yeah, I doubt that as well.
But they probably heard in passing like, Hoist Gracie or something in the UFC and jiu-jitsu. Yeah, totally. So I think we could probably center more on that conceptually as like the reason folks go there, and how do these things we do fit into that framework, and then understanding like there's a kind of an offshoot where you do all these other crazy things as well. Because I'll say, I'm going to give a detail and try to bring it back full circle. Okay. Like, I love leg attacks. I love, and I don't train them all the time, but like I know them all, and I can hit them a lot of times. They're really good folks in there, Darian, Nate, a lot of folks that'll probably tear me up. But my defense to most leg locks is really just stand up and crush the person in front of you.
Gotcha.
So I think it's less about your responsibility in society, because jiu-jitsu, you're flat on the ground half the time. So it's like, good luck getting there if you don't know a takedown in the first place, which could be the case. I don't know. And this doesn't have to do with our gym. Yes. I'm just talking about jiu-jitsu writ large. So I think the responsibility is more there, recontextualizing, like, how do these moves fit together? Because you'll have someone that comes in that's the trial class person that maybe saw a move on like how to do rear naked choke, and they'll choke you because you weren't expecting them to know how to do it. Sure. Yet self-defense was never even in your mind. Yes. It's like, hey, I'm doing this move here, and here's how we do it. So I think it's more important that we kind of reestablish that. Gotcha. And then when we do the offshoots, absolutely fine. It's great to know there's a time and a place for everything, but just kind of explaining that fundamental concept a bit more. And then also just the concept of when you're rolling, what is your objective for someone that's new, just to give them some footing to stand on. Yes. I think that's more of where I would say that there's a need, at least in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Now, back to your initial question about more of the social responsibility. Sure. I think once you've done it for a while, you know that the chances are really good that you could hurt most folks around you sure. Who don't train.
Yeah. And maybe that does come back to like the self-defense aspect, right? Of like having these discussions, like, hey, when is it appropriate to like, okay, something's happening over here, like a husband and wife, whatever. Like, when is it appropriate to actually, intervene in something like that versus, okay, that's like none of my business, or I could get hurt by stepping in here, that sort of thing. But.
And I think the second part of this is you also understand the benefit of this martial art is that there can be some really skilled people out there that you don't know a thing in the world, but they know. So I think the martial art itself gives you a healthy respect of others. And you're probably, I don't have any science to back this up or any statistics,
bro science,
but I would say the folks that are loudmouths in the streets trying to cause problem, it's probably almost an inverse relationship to their ability to fight.
Sure.
Because the ones that do fight and do train know what other folks could be capable of.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, that's the one thing about jiu-jitsu that really, before I found jiu-jitsu, I was, I entered into law enforcement. I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now. Just big into
you know it's
crazy, dude. Yeah, I was really big into bodybuilding and that sort of thing. So when I entered into the police academy, I was about 200 pounds.
Okay.
Right. So I'm like 172 right now. And so I was just a big, slow guy for sure. But like I had this idea in my head. I was like, dude, I'm a strong, athletic dude. Like I've got no problem. And then when I first did jiu-jitsu with some of like my partners at the police academy, I was like, I am a helpless baby and I can't do anything. And then it took me a long time where like, okay, maybe once I learned like a couple things and I'll be able to figure this out. Right. And then I just kept on having these moments where I realized like, man, you just don't like guys that I'd look at like, dorky dude, like whatever, kick his ass. Right. Yeah. And then he puts the boots to you and you're like, oh my gosh. And that happens often enough that you're like, you don't know, like you said, what other people are capable of. And it's like, you avoid any type of confrontation like that at all costs until it comes down to it, right? Yeah. Not to say that you don't walk around with like a certain amount of, confidence in your ability and stuff, but with that said, you just don't know who you're standing across from. And I think that's an important point. And like you were saying, like the idea of like the self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu. When I first started jiu-jitsu, it was all about, I was a cop. So it was like, this is going to be the best way for me to be able to handle myself in some type of street situation, especially specific to law enforcement, where my goal is to get this person into custody, get them on the ground and put them into handcuffs, right? So like in that context, jiu-jitsu clearly made the most sense. So I entered into jiu-jitsu with that mindset of like, okay, what's going to be beneficial to me in the street? And so that's why I hated leg locks for the longest time. Like, why would I ever use this in a street fight? But once I got my purple belt, it got to a point where I'm like, okay, we're kind of I have an understanding of jiu-jitsu now that like the street fight stuff, all those fundamentals are back here.
Yeah.
So if I want to progress in jiu-jitsu, I have to embrace some of these positions and some of these technical philosophies that are for beating other people that are good at jiu-jitsu, not just being in a street fight, and that kind of a transitional period did occur with me. And now me and, Big Nate, not that you're not also a Big Nate, but like Big Nate, we're doing a seminar at a karate academy. And I was kind of like, hey, what are you guys looking for? And they're like, well, we're a karate academy, so we want something that's more self-defense oriented. And then so now I'm like going back to revisit over the last, 5 years or whatever, like what would have benefited me the most to have focused on in that time, and what would I present in that context as far as jiu-jitsu goes. Now that I'm more in like this, I definitely like my combative stuff. Like I do knife seminars and all this kind of stuff. I enjoy that. But at this stage in jiu-jitsu, it's a lot more focused on being effective at jiu-jitsu when grappling with another guy who's also good at jiu-jitsu, not just like some type of random street encounter or something like that. So I think that's a good. And to your point, I think that is something that we could emphasize and like talk a little bit more of. And I thought that more people would be into that, but I don't think as many people are as I would have expected initially.
Yeah. I think I'm glad to hear the way you described it, because I agree. Like I like every bit of it.
Yeah.
But it's do you have the framing in your own mind that, hey, if push came to shove, am I going to instinctually pull guard?
Yeah.
And like, I'm afraid that would happen.
Sure.
And I mean, there are videos of that.
Yeah.
And same with like even a leg lock, for instance. Yeah. I mean, it could work. It could definitely work, but you're also at you could get hit. A number of things could happen. So that's where I am with that. But I do enjoy it. I love flow rolling. I mean, I do think I'm probably more in the pain pressure side of the scale than like, but I can flow.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
But it's not about, abuse. It's about efficiency. Sure. And what can I do the least amount of work to have the maximum amount of control? And that's the time I'm always trying to find the sweet spot. And I'll tell you what I'm really struggling with right now is, and I say struggle in a very positive sense, is Matt from T-Town. He's like, a short-term goal. Like I really want to figure out a way to beat this guy. Yeah. And like, I tell him every time, like, I'm studying. Yeah. And I mean, this guy, I think he's like D1 wrestler, black belt for years, ex-fighter, like military, like the whole package. And I learned so much from him. Sure. And he's not, I mean, he's heavy. He's got to be plus 200, I would think. For sure. So, he's a force to be reckoned with, but I really appreciate the fact that he exists because it kind of tells me where I stand in the grand scheme of things. And it's like, I am struggling here. Yes. Yet there is a path forward. And if I keep finding these openings, I'm going to adjust my game and one day I'll catch him in something. I've gotten close a couple times, but those are the things. I'm answering a question you asked much earlier. I completely derailed.
It's okay.
Those are the kind of short-term things that are fun for me and that I'm always trying to like, until that happens, it's going to be this like short-term mission that I'm on. That is what kind of keeps me going back to the mats.
I love that. All the time. So bring this all around, all the way back. I want to ask you, so the people that are listening that are looking at, this new black belt, if you could reach back in time and talk to yourself as far as like, what would you have done differently? Or what are some things that you think you did right to get your black belt? And we'll leave it on this question, but what is some advice for those people like, I want to be a black belt someday and I want to be a good black belt? What is the advice that you would give to people that may be at like blue belt or purple belt level right now?
The overrated piece, I guess, keeps showing up. It is going to be important. Yeah. But no, it's, I think it's not even as so much like a technical advice, because I think you'll find that through simply showing up, but it's more of, where else in your life have you shown that level of dedication? Yeah. And what are the elements that you've applied there? And so just apply those here as well. And I think what it is, you're going to miss some days. Things will come up and maybe you'll miss a season. Yeah. And just come back and you're going to be disappointed in your performance, but it doesn't mean that everything's lost. It just means like, hey, I've got a rough week or month or however long. Because if you do take more than about 3 weeks off, there seems to be a pretty precipitous drop in like skill and your memory and all that. So that's normal though. And then the thing is, it does come back pretty quickly. Yeah. Cardio comes back, all that comes back. So just the longer view, I think is what matters. And if it's something you want to do forever, then black belt's just one stop along the journey. Yeah. So that perspective is what I would say. And it will happen. It's a matter of fact.
It's a matter of fact.
There was something I wanted to add to that and it escaped my mind.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah. Black belt.
There you go. Keep
so
going.
Yeah. I've always been very big on goal setting, and I write my goals down. I make plans to get them, and I revise goals. I'm constantly adjusting. Like that's just my happy place. Yeah. Every facet of my life, and I have forever. Yeah. I lived in France because I set a goal that I wanted to live in France. I learned French.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'm fluent in French.
Whoa.
Like just random. Like so, I had this history of setting these goals, and the thing is, a lot of times you achieve them, and like the old. I realize I'm leaning away from.
You're
this
good. You're all good.
Maybe the audio is
it'll pick up. You'll be all right.
Uh, a lot of times the kind of the truism is true that like once you achieve it, it's like, well, the journey was fun.
Gotcha.
And that is true. But I will say getting the black belt last week has been the most sustained joy I've had out of any achievement of my life.
Wow.
And I feel happy about it today. I'll feel happy about it tomorrow because it's a thing that, you can't buy. I mean, you can literally buy a black belt.
Yeah.
You're going to have I bought one the other day just to wrap around my belt at home. So I know you can buy them. But being bestowed one, it's a different story altogether.
Yes.
And that degree of happiness and joy that I'm experiencing is a lot more than I anticipated, and it's sustained. And I fully see myself embracing kind of this new facet that I have now, and I really want to teach more. I love teaching.
Yeah.
That's probably the other answer to your question. Like, what advice would you give?
Yeah.
Once I discovered teaching, that became a joy to me, more so than almost anything else in the gym.
Really?
And I never thought that would be the case.
Yeah.
But once I started teaching classes and got over the jitters of like, do I really know this? I fully embrace it every time I teach, and I take it seriously and I put a lot into it. And I love the fact that there are people that are willing to listen and want to hear what I have to share. It's a very fulfilling aspect of the circle, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Also, you put on awesome classes.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like it's been a while since I've actually been in a class that you've taught, but it was just like, you just like to get after it right away, dude. And that's something that I certainly enjoy. I'll close by kind of saying this. It's very interesting to hear, because for me, black belt is like this thing off in the distance, right? But I also recognize that at one point purple belt felt the exact same way, and then you get there and like, okay, well, I accomplished that thing, now what am I supposed to do from here? It's like these milestones where you're kind of reassessing. It's like, in a black belt is just right through all the belts, you can just kind of look at the next belt, but then you get your black belt and it's like, oh, it's almost like this, you just walked out of the forest and you just see this huge grand opening, and you're kind of becoming, you're really in charge of like your own journey at that point. And I think that's can be kind of a poignant thing to think about. But anyway, guys, this has been episode 18. That's crazy. I say this every podcast, I'm gonna say it again. Most podcasts don't even make to episode 10, so we've almost doubled what the average podcast gets to, which is pretty neat. Pretty stoked to be there. We're coming up on 600 downloads now, which is pretty cool. It's been kind of a journey. It's been a lot of fun, and I've been very thankful for guys like you, Nate, that have chose to come out here and get on a mic. It's because it can be kind of like, it's weird. It can be kind of weird to like talk on a microphone, that kind of thing. For some people, you seem pretty comfortable, but you also do like presentations and stuff, as far as I understand. So there's all that. So if you want to follow us on social medias, we have Instagram. My personal one is Aaron Myers 190, AARON MYERS 190, and then our podcast, our dedicated podcast Instagram is The Grappler's Dilemma. And I have been hammering it with content lately because I have a really cool AI app. So I just plug in these videos and it kicks out stuff that hopefully will go viral at some point. We're just trying to use the technology that we have available now, because it's a one-man show, Nate. Like, I'm out here trying to just do the best that I can. I don't know. It might get to a point where people are like, okay, dude, you're putting too much stuff out on here, but it's just so easy. I put like 3 things a day out on these pages.
What was your motivation to start all this and continue this?
It was so me and Cody got this all going off, and we were always having conversations about jiu-jitsu and martial arts. Like conversations like we just had now, that was like, par for the course. He would come over, we'd do dinner, and then we talk about our day, and then all of a sudden like jiu-jitsu would come up, and the next thing I know, I've got a gi jacket from upstairs, and we're like going over techniques or talking about our gym and the relationships in there, or why we were thankful for jiu-jitsu. It was just something that kept on coming up. And then I had done a podcast much earlier on, and Cody had actually listened to some of it, but we were sitting literally in my living room. He's like, we should just start recording our conversations and like posting them somewhere. I was like, okay, what would our name be? Right. And he's the one who came up with the name. The name was really creative. I wish I would have thought of it, but so he came up with that. Cody. Yeah, it's very Cody, dude. That's for sure. And so we were just sitting around. It's like, I already had as you can see, and I can't guys can't see it it's off camera, but like I have all this music equipment. So like I grew up in like junior high school recording music and like playing in bands and stuff. So I already had a really good understanding of like audio engineering and how to do that. So all the technical stuff was really easy for me. So it just came down to, okay, let's get a couple microphones, sit down and do it. And yeah, then it just got to a point where, you talk about being intentional with stuff, or I to have to be intentional about conversations and think about ideas where I'm like, man, I've never really thought about this before. It'd be fun to explore this with another person. And it's been very interesting now because, it used to be just me and Cody bouncing ideas off one another. And I already kind of knew where he was with a lot of stuff, and likewise for me. So to like have guys like you who it's like, I don't really know you outside of the gym. And so, I've never really had some of these types of conversations with some of the guys in the gym. So like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast and we just talk and explore this?
Pretext.
Yeah. And the guys at the gym have been so supportive where they're like, hey dude, we listen to, especially, and I know that Rob Hayden will listen to this, dude. That guy is one guy for sure that every time I see him, he will mention something. He's like, hey dude, I listened to the newest episode, and then he'll like give me some tidbit. And dude, I don't like, if this never makes it above 1,000 downloads a month, right? Little things like that is so meaningful for me. Like, oh man, one of my teammates cares enough that he's listening to, what me and whoever I'm interviewing has to say. Like that's awesome. That's so huge to me.
Well, Rob's good people.
Yeah, dude, big time. But yeah, dude, that was kind of like the way that all this kind of stuff came about. And now I'm just kind of like grabbing it and running with it. And certain things are popping off on like social media. I actually had to delete one post the other day because so many people were like arguing in the comments. It was getting so toxic. I was like, I don't even want this on our page. And I deleted it. And it was the first time I had something. It was like 15,000 views on this comment. Yeah, dude. And I was like, but then I thought about that Joe Rogan thing. It's like, that's why you don't read the comments, dude. You just like go along. But it's been a learning process.
Okay. I know you're wrapping up, but can I share a
totally weird... Hey man, like I said, we have up to an hour and a half for sure. You got 15 minutes.
Cody Cody stories. Since you brought him up in the kind of the genesis of this. Last time I saw Cody, it was a Friday evening. We were there for Darian's class. I was like, man, I want to hit this ninja choke. I just saw like I can't remember Leo could tell me the fighter, but he hit this ninja choke on a single leg. That was his defense. I was like, I got to try that. Cody was messing around with butterfly guard. I was like, I got it. And I was like so happy for myself because it worked. And, that's literally my last memory of Cody. It was like, it did leave a mark on me. I wish we'd hung around and talked afterwards or something, but I'm glad that we had that last experience because I was debating even like showing up at the gym that night. Yeah. So I got to see him at least right before he passed. But I've had two deaths recently in my life. One in December, and then Cody. What was this, about a month ago? And in both of these, there were strange phenomena that I don't really understand. And this is where we're going to take a turn from jiu-jitsu directly. Yeah, do it. But I just want to share because it has to do with Cody. Yes. So in both of these instances, I had like a sense that something was amiss. Yeah. And I said stuff to my wife in both cases. I was like, man, I don't, in the first one, I literally said the words, I feel like, I was listening to music. I was like, I feel like this music, it's reaching into my heart or reaching into my soul and squeezing my heart. Words I've never said in my life. Yeah. And that's not something I just walk around thinking about. Yeah. And then at that point in time, I traced it back with the timestamp. My brother-in-law passed that night from a heart attack. Oh my God. He was literally having his heart squeezed. So that was strange. Yeah. Then with Cody, I was flying. I was on a flight to Boston, and just like it was a pleasurable flight, and that's odd in and of itself. Sure. It's like I'd never normally I'm just kind of like dreading the flight, but I was listening to podcasts, I was reading, I was catching up on all my work, and just experienced joy the whole flight. Bliss almost. And the second I landed and turned my phone on, like this sense of dread just washed over me. I couldn't explain it. Yep. Again, I called my wife. I was like, I don't know what just happened. Like I've got this crazy sense of dread. And Leo was in the other room. He's like, hey, is that Dad on the phone? I need to talk to him. It's like, somebody from the gym died. It's like Cody died. I was like, no, you can't. You gotta be kidding me. So I've had these things that are so strange and you didn't ask for the Supernatural podcast.
No,
I don't know what's going on, but like,
okay.
I only mention it because this is a memory of Cody. I don't know, man. It's these run-ins lately and just the general awareness.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wanted to share that story.
Yeah. Hey, man.
It's odd. I don't know if you ever had feelings like that, and you can kind of link them back to some things that have happened, but this is a strange universe we're in.
Yeah. Well, me and Cody were both Christians, so it's like we very much would have spiritual discussions and that sort of thing. So it's one of those. Oh, man. Yeah, I miss that guy every day, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could be at the service.
Yeah.
And, I miss him. And you talk about like the technical exploration. Of
yeah,
jiu-jitsu.
man.
There's probably no one better suited.
When you talk about guys that just changed my perspective of jiu-jitsu, man, Cody was he was the guy for sure, you know. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean
to
go
hey,
down
dude,
this path,
no.
man.
You know, it's like I haven't gotten into that feeling in a while. So I think that's actually a good thing to.
Yeah.
It's even sorrow and a sense of mourning is a good thing to experience. I don't necessarily it's like kind of a bummer to experience when you're in it, but like for me it's a reminder that there was love there. You know what I mean? Like those kind of relationships. So I think it's a good thing to go back and explore that. And like as far as like I believe in that stuff 100%. So it's like when you have those moments, I think there's something. Some people identify as the universe, like you call it God, where it's like there's just some type of spiritual connection that's happening where you're like, you're more you're in tune to something, even if you don't necessarily recognize what it is. And so I think that's very very much true. Very much true.
Yeah, that's kind of a thing I've been exploring a lot lately. Kind of like the universe piece. This has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu.
Dude,
now. So
here's the thing. Me and Matt, this is like where our conversations go almost every time we're together.
So we're in the midst of trying to sell our house right now. And we had all these expectations of what would happen. And it's odd that none of that has really come to pass.
Sure.
Like what we were planning. And it really forces you to take a step back. And I think there is a way to tie that back to jiu-jitsu. Is like you do make these plans and these ideas of how you expect things to happen, but they rarely actually kind of progress the way that you anticipate.
Yes.
I think you have to always kind of set your directions where you want to go. And these doors open, but man, sometimes all your planning and attempts, you're fighting something that maybe you're not supposed to win.
Yeah.
And I'm more open to this universal idea that I just kind of brought up through the context of death and thinking that there is, there's something out there.
Sure.
And balancing that with like your own ego focused goal setting. And like, it's okay to just take a breath and be like, look, all right, so this one thing I wanted didn't happen. Maybe there's a reason and maybe I go somewhere else and in the grand scheme of things, it's going to end up better. I think the older I get, the more I'm in that camp.
Yeah. Is that right?
And it's not going to ever take goals away.
Sure.
But it takes the setbacks away to a certain degree. It's like, well, yeah, we gave it a try. Maybe that just wasn't the right thing. Time will tell. Yeah. And let's let time tell.
Yeah. I wonder about like when you're talking about like the age component to that, like when you see where you're at, like the position you are at in life now, and then you look back, you're like, man, I can't believe, right? You're in it. You're like, can't believe this door closed.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but then you can look back and be like, okay, but it closed, and then it led to this other thing you would never have been able to accomplish had you not had that door slammed in your face and that sort of thing.
It's undeniable. I mean, I've had jobs where it's like, I get anytime I go for like a job or career or money, anything like I'm more dogged at that than I am in any other like facet of my life. Like jiu-jitsu is one thing, but like that's like another level. So like I've had setbacks there where, it seemed kind of heartbreaking in the moment. And 2 months later, it's like the unforeseen thing was like the best thing ever. Sure. And I've had that happen so many times in my life. Even this last month, there was something I was working for that didn't pan out. And it's been a blessing. Yeah. So it's kind of like universal surfing. Just ride the waves, as they come. Like you got in your mind what you want to do, but you got to ride the wave that comes. And like,
dude, I think that's some serious wisdom, and I think that's a perfect place to like leave this. Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Yeah, okay. Well, all right.
Yeah. Well,
that's the nicest way I've been told to shut up ever.
Yeah. Listen, dude, I have a very specific subscriptions plan with Buzzsprout, so I got to be within certain time. But here's the thing, like, especially if you're not moving, dude, you have to come back and we can talk a little bit more. Because now, that was the first time that I've had a conversation about things that were, like, even deeper than, like, jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And that is the direction this podcast is moving into. Yeah. So, like, me and Matt have had a lot of episodes where we're talking about, like, really heavy things when it comes to life. And, you know, not to be... I don't know. Me and Cody always had that vision where it's like it's going to progress into that because like jiu-jitsu was just this central hub that kind of like brought people together and talking about certain things and philosophies, right? Things like suicide or trauma and that kind of thing. I think that's a central component to anybody who's lived, you know? Yeah. So like when you start bringing that kind of stuff up, I think that, you know, this is just a good forum to be able to talk about. And not everyone's comfortable talking about it. So it's like when I have someone sitting across from me who is like willing to like share and riff, you know, mutual experiences and stories. I think that's important for other people to hear. It's like, oh shoot, I'm not alone in this. Like I've also experienced that. I've just never really talked about it before and that sort of thing. So I think that's all a good thing. But
well, I may regret it. But we'll see.
We'll see, dude. Hopefully not, though. Hopefully not. Well, thanks for coming out, dude. Thanks for coming out and recording this. It's like you know, people taking some time out of their day to come sit down and chit chat with me for an hour and a half is kind of cool. Like whenever I ask someone, I'm always like, man, am I gonna be a burden by asking this? Are they gonna feel like obligated to do this? Or are they gonna do it because they want to do it? I'm still trying to get Chris Yeager. I'm like, I've been poking at him. He's playing around with it, dude. But I think that would be an interesting cat to have a conversation with. But yeah. Well,
I would definitely listen to the Chris Yeager podcast because I've known this guy longer than anyone, and at the gym.
Yeah.
Chris and Darian. You know, Nate, I guess the four there. But, you know, I don't know how much I actually know about it.
Dude, everybody has said the same thing, and I feel the same way. So it's like, I'm going to get him on here, mark my words. Yeah. He's going to get on, he's going to sit in that chair, and we're going to have a discussion. I just want to know, like, I don't know, dude. I feel like he's like CIA or something like that. I feel like this is all just a facade, the stuff that he talks about, you know. But anyway, guys, that has been episode 18. That was just it was a false exit 30 minutes ago when I was talking about that. We had to get the rest of that out. I'm glad that you shared that as well, dude. Like, I think anytime I can hear a good Cody story, like that's, you know, warms my heart. But anyway, guys, this is where we ended. We ended with an os. Okay. So I do my tagline, and then we hit an os. Like, everyone has to do it. Even Big Nate had to do it, and like he did it in protest. But you know, you're gonna be a little more game for it. So with that, train hard, stay safe. Os.